Dozens of climbers from around the world gathered beneath K2, the world's second highest mountain, and one of its most dangerous. It was the summer of 1986, and among them were Jerzy Kukuczka and Tadeusz Piotrowski, two of Poland's most accomplished mountaineers, aiming for a new, direct route up the mountain's immense south face. They would stand together on the summit, but only one would return. The other would vanish into K2's icy slopes, leaving behind one of the most dangerous and untouched routes in mountaineering history. That route would be named the Polish Line, a sheer, avalanche-prone wall of rock and ice, rising about 11,800 feet from glacier to summit. In nearly 40 years, no one has dared to climb it again. The attempt was part of a large international expedition organized by Dr. Karl Herrligkoffer with permits for Broad Peak and K2's south face. On June 7th, the K2 base camp was established at 18,530 feet, a crowded season with climbers from Italy, France, the United States, England, Austria, Korea, and Poland. Yet the south face remained a world apart, steep, dark, and seldom touched. Kukuczka had unfinished business here. In 1982, he had probed part of this face, testing a direct path through its center. Now he wanted to finish it, alpine style, without bottled oxygen. The Poles were joined by 3 Swiss climbers and German mountaineer Toni Freudig. Together they planned to push into the center of the south face and see how far a pure, direct line would take them. On June 9th, they began fixing lines toward Camp 1 at 19,700 feet. The slope was already steep and exposed, demanding ropes from the start. From there, they established Camp 2 at 21,000 feet beneath a massive sérac. Above loomed thousands of feet of ice and rock littered with avalanche debris. It was here the team began to splinter. The Swiss withdrew, worn down by the conditions and the sheer commitment the route demanded. Soon after, Toni Freudig also turned back. In less than 2 weeks, only Kukuczka and Piotrowski remained. On June 22nd, they carried 2 days' food and bivouac gear upward, reaching about 24,300 feet on steep snow and ice. But storms rolled in, forcing a retreat to base camp, where they waited for a week in isolation. The break in the weather came on July 3rd. Kukuczka and Piotrowski moved fast, climbing back to Camp 2 without difficulty. The next day, they returned to their gear cache, but the effort was punishing, climbing more than half a mile straight up. In the thin air, drained every reserve they had. On July 5th, they entered a massive couloir shaped like a hockey stick. Reaching its upper end, they bivouacked at around 25,600 feet, knowing that above them was the most uncertain part of the route, a vertical headwall they had only glimpsed from afar. At dawn, they faced the crux, a wall of rock and ice rising about 328 feet. The first 100 feet almost vertical and brutally difficult, even for experts at sea level, let alone in the thin air above 26,000 feet. With only a single 100-foot rope and minimal gear, they gained just a single rope length all day. They bivouacked at nearly 27,000 feet without enough fuel to melt snow, surviving on a small cup of water each, warmed over a candle. On July 8th, they stripped their loads to the bare minimum. No tent, no sleeping bags, no stove, just bivouac sacks, a camera, and the hope of reaching the top before the weather turned. Above the headwall, they stepped onto the Abruzzi Ridge at 27,200 feet. The terrain eased, but deep snow slowed them to a crawl. A mist rolled in, cutting visibility to a few feet. By 6 p.m., they weren't sure if the summit was even possible that day. But then, under the shadow of a sérac, the ground suddenly leveled. At 6:25 p.m., Kukuczka reached the summit at 28,250 feet. Piotrowski joined him minutes later. They shook hands, took photographs, A new, direct line on K2's south face, alpine style, without oxygen. But daylight was almost gone. The real fight was getting down alive. They left the summit late, following the normal Abruzzi route in the fading light. A single flashlight cut through the darkness until its bulb burned out. In an instant, they were blind in the thin, freezing air at 27,200 feet. There was no choice but to bivouac. On July 9th, avalanches swept the slopes. They lost the route more than once, managing only about 1,300 feet of descent before another night out, this time without water. On the morning of July 10th, the sky cleared, but the reprieve was deceptive. Exhaustion had dulled their reflexes, and Piotrowski moved sluggishly as they prepared to descend a notorious slope, the same section where Art Gilkey had died in 1953. In his fatigue, Piotrowski hadn't fastened his crampons properly. Halfway down the slope, one crampon came loose and slid away. Seconds later, the other tore free. Now he was clinging to hard ice with only his ice axe, desperately trying to hold on. Kukuczka shouted, but there was no time to react. Piotrowski slipped. His axe skittered free, and he tumbled down toward Kukuczka. The impact nearly tore Kukuczka from the slope, but he managed to hold his ground. Piotrowski slid past him, over the edge, and disappeared into the abyss. Kukuczka called out again and again, but there was no reply, only the wind sweeping across the face. Somewhere far below, the slope ended in a sheer drop. No one would ever see Piotrowski again. Alone, Kukuczka forced himself to keep moving. Hours later, he reached a Korean camp at 26,000 feet. The radio was dead, but a stove let him melt snow and drink before collapsing into sleep. The following day, he continued his descent, passing another Korean camp at about 22,300 feet, where a lone climber loaned him a working radio. Base camp was already aware of the tragedy. News had spread quickly. Other climbers, including the Swiss, who had turned back earlier, had scoured the slopes for any sign of Piotrowski. But there was nothing. No body, no equipment, no trace. On July 14th, Kukuczka reached base camp. Climbers from every nation offered congratulations for the route and condolences for the loss. 4 days later, he left the mountain for good. The Polish line entered mountaineering history, a route completed in pure alpine style, without oxygen and without fixed camps. So dangerous and avalanche-prone that in the nearly 4 decades since, no one has dared to climb it again. It stands as both a pinnacle of human skill and a stark warning. On K2, even the best can be claimed without mercy. The summer of 1986 became K2's deadliest season, claiming 13 lives. Piotrowski's fall was a stark reminder of how quickly triumph can turn to tragedy in the death zone. For Kukuczka, the summit was a victory, forever shadowed by the loss of his partner and friend. Today, the Polish line remains untouched, a testament to the courage of those who dared and the danger that keeps others away. On K2, glory and tragedy walk side by side, and some lines are never meant to be repeated. If you're fascinated by daring missions, true stories, and dramatic history, hit subscribe and join me next time for another journey into the world's most dangerous places.